Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has been... What is this? That has barely watched any object shows. You have to fix that. What is this? Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catchup, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them, whether they're new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter, we will get to it all. The song that you are currently listening to is none other than Bad Hamster by Mikey. I decided that I wanted to give it a little bit of a feature because I think it's pretty cool. And I wanted to, considering this is a Keepup episode, we're in fact going to be keeping up with creators that we have already heard of here today. Because there's been a lot of episodes released in the past days. About 3, 4, 5 creators, I think over 5 creators have uploaded shows within the past 48 hours. So I absolutely wanted to show that off. And this is a Keep Up episode. Who better than to keep up with than Mikey, who of course inspires this series with his series Object Show Roundup, which is way better than this. Go watch that instead. But yeah, I felt like it was worthy to give this song a little spotlight. I mean, look, you're listening to absolute fire here in the background. Like, look, I'll let you listen to some of it. You see? It's just fire. Alright, well, while that's playing until the end of the section, which is when I cut it off, we're going to be discussing the episode that we're going to be taking a look at. The primary one is going to be DIBS. So, DIBS we covered around a week ago, we reviewed DIBS 1 through 3. And it is now time for DIBS 4. Last time, everybody died, as the challenge was a battle royale at a party. The only survivor, if I'm not mistaken, was the Dorito, or the nacho chip, whatever they were called. Very sorry. This episode is titled DIBS 4, Pipe Moments and Flora. It released one day ago. It's already garnered itself 4.8 thousand views. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it. Let's do all of that good stuff. And then we'll talk all about DIBS. Let's go. Hello, I have just returned from watching DIBS 4, Pipe Moments and Flora. So, as a quick reminder, what is DIBS? DIBS is, well, first of all, dial-up battle show, but DIBS is the series where there is no script, and section by section, a different person on the team comes in and makes the entirety of it. Alright? So that is what it is. As usual with this concept, it makes a very interesting situation for this episode to sort of play out with, right? Because you can sort of imagine, okay, this is what was going on here, and then that's happening there, right? I will say one of the main benefits, right, of this format that I guess has transpired is that this format has managed to make the episodes of the show themselves feel extremely full. Like, there is a lack of focus in a way in sections, right? Because, we're switching it around. One person's like, okay, you've done this team, I will now go see what's going on with another team, right? So then that ends up happening a lot. Because usually each person, I guess, would kind of take it as a scene transition, right? Which makes most sense. It's not very often that I see like the thing switch within the scene itself. It's usually different scene, different person, right? Which makes these episodes feel extremely full, though, right? Because I know a lot of the time I'd criticize the lack of focus. However, in this specific case, we're dealing with a pretty big cast of fellas. It's not like, I don't remember exactly how large it is, but it's pretty large. It's not like the largest, but it's not small either. There's a good chunk of characters to deal with. So that general like swapping of everything just makes it feel like a lot is happening, even if it's not necessarily been that long, So it's like, it makes every episode truly feel like you are watching a bit of like something actually play out, because a lot of the questions that I ask in object shows, for example, okay, so we're seeing you do this. What's going on over there for all this time? But this is like the show that answers that. Like, you pretty much always know what people have been up to when another person's there, right? So nothing feels weird which is a very nice benefit of it. So yeah, we first of all begin with a couple of scenes as we get recharged, reacquainted a little bit. Everybody gets revived. We get to hear some certain revivals, except the Moon Hyundai Sonata, which had to be fixed by the Build the Fellas because they were. I don't think you can, I guess, revive a car. So that's fair. We get to see a flashback scene of the blueprint doing whatever the hell they are doing. I don't even know who that is in the flashback scene. They look like a button. I'm not even gonna lie. Um, so yeah, we have some recommended characters. Not too many, but recommended characters are indeed real. Very nice. If you think about it, this show is just recommended characters from the cast. Like, hey, I'm gonna add my character to the show. So yeah, we then end up eventually after having a little bit of team switching. Actually, no, the team switching shenanigans after, because first you have to do blend or end, which is the final the elimination thing that was made this time for the elimination, because this show sort of swaps whether it has an elimination or doesn't have an elimination. I will say I do personally believe, I'm not sure, right, if it's correct, but I do personally believe that blend or end is entirely a concept invented because Slobber ends up getting eliminated and they already would make a pretty good blend. Just saying, that's why I don't know. That gave me that vibe, because I was like, okay, if you blend do that, it just ends up as a broken thing. It doesn't end up as a smoothie, so it doesn't end up being as cool. Um, so yeah, we end up having some interesting one-liners. There's a lot of interesting one-liners in this episode, I must say. Honestly, the amount of time we have referenced love in this episode, whether it's with the beginning, with the blueprint, the lips fella, then here is Become Be Pollen, then there with the pumpkin later, then it's not, the pumpkin fella, then there's another one in the middle, Dorito, I think, 8-Ball, Bibindo. There's so many people. There's so much happening in that department. But yeah, I don't remember who I predicted to get out, but I think it could have been 8-Ball, but 8-Ball actually ends up being safe significantly by a number. Oh yeah, Miss 8-Ball. That's why I remember. Oh yeah, 8-Ball did have something to do with it, but with love, but I didn't remember why. Which I guess I get hella wrong because I predicted them to be out first, but they actually end up getting safe first, which is completely the opposite. But then it ends up that the final two is Slobber and the Lips, which, yep, that's fair. I mean, I don't know what the voting numbers are to be specific, but it is happening a bunch in these later shows I'm watching that the duo suffers a little bit from being a duo, because Slobber and the Lips are a duo, which means that when one person, like usually when somebody wants one of them safe, they want the duo safe, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, I want Lips to stay because I want the duo to stick together, right? That's usually what they want. So they want both of them safe. However, the vote itself can be for one person only, right? Which means that in a vote save, you're splitting up. So these two people have a significantly harder time actually gaining mass votes, because the fans of them have two characters to choose, whereas other people, right, have got one character to choose. So, like, they can just pick their character. In this case, when you are a fan of a duo, you have the two characters you can pick, and that ends up way more complicated. That's why they end up bottom two, because I'm sure I don't know the voting numbers, but if you combine them, they're safe probably pretty easily. But once you do that 50%-ish split between one and the other, they end up both falling down the rankings considerably, which is probably why they both got bottom 2. That would be my presumption. We don't have voting numbers, at least here within the video itself. I'm sure they sent it, they scored or whatever, but don't have the voting number right there. However, that's what I would guess. So they end up being blended, which is rather unfortunate. We go from slobber to more slobber, to be honest. We end up having some interesting things. Yeah, we end up having some team switching shenanigans, which I wasn't really expecting, to be honest. I must say that team swapping does make the situation of teams a little bit more confusing, to be honest. However, it's mostly alright. I mean, like, it's mostly alright, but even in some teams, it's like the characters themselves are confused what team they're on. So, I remember there was one scene where, like, Whistle and Silhouette, like, oh, this is not our team. So it's like, wait. To be honest, I completely forgot that it's not their team until later. But, yeah. Whistle yet again doesn't get to pick up the phone. One day they will. Look, okay. I'm just saying, who's gonna be the brave one? Who's gonna be the brave one to make Whistle pick up the phone? One day Whistle's gotta pick up the phone, and that best be the best intro of all time, alright? Whistle intro is gonna go hard. As you know, which you have a Silhouette intro, because Silhouette, who I guess is now, shapeshifting as Whistle, ends up having their own intro. It's a lovely intro. I really love how Silhouette's intro takes place as a cinema because of the fabled, cinema scene, like with the freaking dude, I forgot the name of the TV show that's super famous that looks at old movies and discuss them, and there's like the silhouettes on screen and stuff. You know that? What is that called? Fuck. I know that's the thing that it's famous from, right? There's a super popular TV show that just looks at other movies and talks about them as silhouettes, okay? But I don't remember what it's called. But anyway, yeah, I'm really happy. So then we get to see all the silhouettes of the crowd, and then there's a bunch of like puppets, I guess, of the cast being controlled by the silhouette's hand. So that's an amazing little intro. I don't know how many different people have done each intro, but they're all amazing so far. The intros have been an elite little segment of the series for sure. Then we have ourselves fences. 1 billion fences. Paint the fence. Whoever paints the most amount of fence wins. Whoever paints the least amount of fence is up for elimination. Okay? All looking good so far. So, we have an absolute chaos of happening. Nobody really knows what the hell they're doing. But, a few teams come up with a few strategies. So, we actually have roughly, I'm not going to say it's infinite, but a very infinite looking amount of fence. Now, I would debate, no, apparently this is being said as if it's hard, but it actually makes it easier, right? Because one of the things that I was originally thinking is that if there's one fence and you had to paint the most amount of it, that'll make fighting between the teams, right? It'd be like Splatoon, right? Like you are mainly, like there's not that much ground to cover, so you have to take over other people's ground after they've colored it in. And then it makes a battle. But when you have infinite amount of fences, that just means that the teams can kind of go on their own. They can go to an empty patch, and unless one team's tactic is specifically to sabotage the other teams, which wouldn't be very smart in my opinion, because there's just so much space, right? Where it's like you're actively sabotaging your own space to be able to try taking down another team's space, which I don't think is a great tactic. So yeah, we end up having lipstick with the whole thing. Fun. So they're doing that because the lips have lipstick, which means that if you kiss the fence, it will color it. So fair enough. That is the tactic that works. It would be very slow. I mean, I'd recommend just getting paint, but lips is very fast. So I guess fair enough to them. 8-ball. No, sorry. So we end up having to get some paint here, doodad. So they absolutely decide to go order paint. The freaking little screen notebook fella. So they end up, however, needing to go to the store, the paint store that exists. Stopwatch ends up speedrunning it down there. They are a stopwatch. That seems like a stopwatch thing to do. CD case. Meanwhile, that team, which I don't remember the team, absolutely will never remember the team names. I'm very sorry. I think you're called Mal. Are you called Malboof? No, I don't know. I think you're called Mal. Are you? Which team is called Malboof? Because I mean, especially like the team names matter especially less when like the people who the team names are from usually leave the teams anyways. So it just ends up being a little bit like, okay. So DVD Case's plan is to grab buckets of paint and then Scorpio Lolly paints the wall. That is an idea. I mean, I don't know why they would. I mean, okay, it's a completely valid idea here from team leader CDK, which eventually ends up having a whole scene dedicated to how are you the team leader. So the thing about being a team leader is that you gotta just be good at making plans. To be fair to this plan from CDK, it's a pretty solid plan. I don't know why you don't just have everybody paint defense. You know, like there's if you're using the same amount of paint either way. If whoever's one person painting or two or multiple people painting, like theoretically it'd be better than multiple painting because you get more done faster. I understand that Scorpio Lolly with whole Zen mode can do a lot of things very well, but you can have Scorpio Lolly Zen while also having everyone else at the same time, right? So I'm not really sure what exactly is going on there. But either way, yeah, we end up having a little bit of a situation. However, before that plan can ever happen, Stopwatch ends up firmly and entirely attacking, on their way to the store, bringing Scorpio Lolly, Putter, I think you're called Putter, and the hot dog along because they were on the way. Then eventually we end up having, Pumpkin getting extremely upset because David is there on the team. They end up breaking the sewer pipes down at the bottom, which makes everything absolutely explode. So there's just a bit of water going off everywhere. It's a disaster. It's not going great. Silhouette protects them, the fellas, David, and the screen, the blue screen, from anything else. Which, very nice here. We're getting a lot of Silhouette. Silhouette in this episode, absolutely, definitely, in my opinion, going to be taking the cake as one of the MVPs. Because, maybe not necessarily in a challenge perspective, but more so in just a character writing perspective. I think Silhouette MVP, people had good ideas what to do with Silhouette, from the intro to the capability of, shapeshifting as somebody else, to either hang out with them or just, be them in a sense. To turning into umbrellas. We've just done smart things with Silhouette in this episode, and I really like that, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future of this character. Absolutely, that they're going to be used in creative ways, that they're going to do creative things, that's going to just be useful all throughout. Then, do we get to see, what is it? The Moon Hyundai Sonata ends up sprinting it to the store faster than the stopwatch, because they have an ultra freaking engine. So fair enough. I do like how the license plate is DIBS D1 B5. Good usage of leet speak. So a big fan. I'm pretty sure that was a thing that was established in a different DIBS episode, maybe even DIBS 1. But I will just point out here again, because just because I have a detail doesn't mean that we'll remember it. Remember, this isn't a written show. Every detail has to be remembered by the person making the scene. So there's a lot of you gotta command it each time. Eventually, Whistle brings Silhouette over, and the fellas get destroyed. 8-Ball, which, well, actually, the Doodad is dead. What do you call? I don't know why I can't remember this character's name. Hold on. Libby? That's not your name. Ben, what are you saying? Libby. Whatever. Ends up saying 8-Ball, which is also apparently a robot. Which is interesting. I will say, all right, I'm just gonna say this, okay? There are actual balls in sports nowadays that have chips inside them. I'm just saying that this is an interesting little detail because I know that like they put chips in certain high level footballs these days because like soccer, America, like the soccer ball, because that way they can detect when through the technology when somebody has hit them, which is useful for declaring offside rules, for declaring handball rules, right? Because if there's been a handball, there will be a the chip will have detected that there was a touch on the ball. So then if you can check if there was a handball touch or if there wasn't, right? When it's a super close situation where it's sort of ambiguous whether somebody touched the ball or not, right? Which a lot of the time happens, when you like skim it. So that does exist. I don't know why they would be there for an 8-ball, but I do think that it's an interesting detail. Anyways, they're at the paint store. So Strandy, the hit character that has strands, would like to buy paint for $37. The $37 bill, which exists now, I hope they make use of that later, ends up wanting to come along if it's free. They deny it. I don't know why they deny it. I feel like that is a win-win situation for the two. I mean, of course, we have Putter. That's a little bit of a fun killer, a style of character. So they're just they're like way too logical. They're too logical in the sense that they kind of ruin plans by just overthink, by just going, what? No, that's stupid, right? They don't hear things out too much. But I find that to be benefit. Like at best, you're getting something for free, and maybe somebody mildly annoying is coming along. Or B, you just get a new team member. It ain't better to have more people on your team? I'm not saying that we're gonna join, but like, I mean, that would have been. I would have taken that offer absolutely. If they can come by, maybe even participate in the show, you have an extra team member that's gonna be loyal to you because they think you guys are cool. I mean, that just feels like a win W. However, no, they eventually reject it. Shrandy ups the price to $50. Very fair. Eventually, Matchstick is the Matchbox ends up being all upset, being like, I'm gonna pour the acid," which also was a strategy. I see the idea of like if you pour the acid, it's gonna melt the freaking fence. However, not really, because if you do that, it's gonna just melt the fence usually. I mean, depending on the acid, but it should just melt the fence, which means that the fence isn't covered in paint. There's just no fence there anymore. You've just destroyed the fence. So yeah, it's not exactly a great strategy. However, thankfully, this character that I forgot the name of because I forgot they existed. The freaking I don't know their name. I proper don't know their name, but they're what are they called? What the hell are you called? I don't know. You're literally a shape. You're literally a circle. How am I supposed to guess your name? Okay, now I don't know, but they have an ultra magical ability that they will be using, and they're gonna charge it up. So yeah, they're gonna do that. Then a Kit Kat and the banana mango and the banana apple fella ends up being complaining up to CDKs that, "Dude, you're always a team leader. Why are you doing this?" And then CDK says, "I don't know why you complain, because you're kind of dumb." So that is the interaction that takes place. I must say, it's definitely a situation. Kit Kat eventually decides to um, do the kick them out, being like, "Hey, go, leave." And then eventually CDK is like, "Hey, you're becoming a leader. You're becoming interesting." But the interesting thing that happens here, we have, okay, I'm not sure if this is planned, but in terms of the DIBS concept, right, of one person deals with the next scene, we might have the first time where a scene has been disregarded. I don't know if that's true, but we could have the first time that a scene has been disregarded. Because that scene where Kit Kat gets like half eaten, right? Because like, oh, I'm gonna eat the Kit Kat, and it turns out to be a memory. That's a scene transition, I'm pretty sure, because our drawing style changes, right? I think we end up on Bonnier section. So I don't know who was the section before. It was like Mopro. I don't know. I saw them at the end because I paid attention to that, but I don't remember exactly whose name was. But having a section be just straight up disregarded by the next person as, oh, you were thinking, isn't a great move. I don't know if I'm a big fan of that. If that isn't agreed upon between at least the two people, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. Because if somebody wants a thing to happen and then the other person's like, nope, memory, nope, not real. I don't know if that's a great move. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if I like that. But hopefully that isn't what happened. Because if it is, I'm like, nah. I mean, I know that it's really stupid if they just eat K-Cap, but like, okay, all right. Well, I'm a bit suspicious. Anyways, I've been talking way too much. Stopwatch eventually gets freaking magneted back with all the paint that was acquired for $50 by the fellas, and then splashing perfectly onto every single freaking fence. Which means that now, which team did it? Because Doodad magneted them all in, which technically made the paint splash, right, into everything. So there's that team. However, the paint itself, that Doodad Splash, was bought by the fellas, and they were in their hand when it got thrown, even though they didn't do the throw itself. So that is the debate. Which one did it? However, Bindo, remember, everybody loves Bindo. So Bindo ends up just making it that both teams say yes. So fair enough. In the meanwhile, everybody else, the builders, the freaking Nacho, they're all just trying to figure out the Nacho chip. They're all trying to figure out, yo, how do we stop this thing? All right. You know, this freaking gigantic water leak. So they're trying to figure it out until eventually the jackhammer is like, yo, puts the screw, and then everybody's going to push, and it's going to get locked down. It's going to be epic. And they're trying to do that. However, there's just the problem is that they need a little bit more power. So then there's the pumpkin fella. So then Gardner, the freaking mother, because grew the random pumpkin in episode 1, ends up being like, hey, could we do that? So then they have a little bit of a moment. They have a little bit of a somber moment. And then after that, we end up having a song that they have. What is the song? Of course, it's a cover rendition of the hit song by Katy Perry, Roar. It is one of the greatest pieces of composition ever. It's actually completely okay. This cover is fine. To be honest, I do enjoy the little scenes and how everybody eventually starts noticing it out. To be fair, Lipstick has done Lips has done an extremely good job at covering that wall, to be fair, so fair enough. Then eventually they end up liking everybody. And then the Mune Hyundai Sonata that has been the scene transitioner ends up crashing into the charge up fella, and they end up not exactly being charged up. Challenge is over. So, you know what that means. It's time for the two teams that didn't do anything, because one team was busy charging up the whole time and didn't paint a single thing. Meanwhile, the other team was busy trying to fix the freaking mess that they caused with the water pipes the whole time, and then they also didn't really do anything, right? So that's interesting. I must admit, right, that it is interesting how, like, the paint didn't get used by that team at all. Because, like, of course, the Mune Hyundai Sonata got the paint and then drove it back. But then, sure, okay, all right. Maybe I'm expecting too much from Acid and Matchbox here. But if you see paint on top of the vehicle, paint the wall. Oh my, not that complicated. You can do that while that's talking. Like, you can speedrun it. It's not like come on, put paint the wall. The car can't do it, but you can just grab the freaking thing. No, oh my god. And by the way, that is the one time where I don't think the timing was done too well. Because I do think, I mean, the Mune Hyundai Sonata goes through the story in 3 seconds with the Ultra engine, but then can't get back. Takes half the full episode to get back. With the same engine. I don't know about that. But yeah, both teams end up deciding to vote one other off. Okay, so the team in Mad Bros end up deciding to vote off Pumpkin because they destroyed the Moon Hyundai Sonata. So they end up leaving until, oh my god, it's incredible. The Nacho Chifella, Master Murderer 3000, person that just talks way too much, ends up sacrificing themselves thanks to their special advantage that they gained. Oh my god, this is so emotional. And then also the other fellow, which I still don't remember the name of, also ends up leaving, even though they were gonna get voted out anyways. So they both leave. Goodbye. Fair enough. Fair enough. as eliminated contestant. Would I have seen Pumpkin eliminated? I think it would have made sense, to be honest, because, we're kind of like, maybe that, I was honestly expecting it to happen, because that roar did kind of give off endgame vibes to an arc, because now Pumpkin's gonna be a better person now, it's all good, and then it's like, okay, you're eliminated, you can go be a better person in the wilderness, right, or something. But like, no, they're not doing that. Pumpkin baby gets to stay another day, and we'll get him to stay a good person. We'll get to see if they're a good person, live on the competition. And meanwhile, the other fella, which I don't remember the name of, they don't matter. That's why I don't remember their name. And if I don't remember your name, that means you're bad. So yeah. Then the lemon tea packet, the tea lemon packet ends up either being or not being a Russian spy. I can't decide. I can't figure it out if that was a joke invented by the Matchbox, or if they actually saw it. But if they're a Russian spy, I mean, I don't really know what to think about it. That is the most random character to be a Russian spy. It's also interesting to make a joke about a Russian spy when there's like when the second biggest part of the object show community is Russian. I don't know if that's okay. I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think they mind. I think they dislike their own government. But like, in general, yeah, we end up having the classic outro that says something completely wrong. And then a post-credit scene. I don't know what the hell's going on in the post-credit scene. I'm going to be 100% honest. It's an absolute chaos. Like, it's like, what is happening? Okay. I mean, actually, it doesn't make sense. Kit Kat is chatting over about, oh, yeah, these CDKs. And CDK's just listening. Hey, CDK's kind of smart, though. CDK's being like, oh, I'm super smart, I'm intelligent. But they're kind of intelligent, though, Like, they got a point. They're not like egotistical character. Oh, I'm so smart. Watch me lose a match of the tic-tac-toe. Well, like CD Kids has kind of got a point. CD Kids is kind of metagaming this a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna increase their confidence, all right, and then I'm gonna strike. So they're kind of smart though. But then, yeah, I have no idea what's going on with the kings over in space. One of them apparently robbed the butterfly, which makes him pretty evil. The other one captured the 8-ball, which means that there's only a robot 8-ball going on, which is gonna be interesting because the robot 8-ball is dead now. Which implies that I don't know how it's gonna happen, because they would work on the revival machine. I mean, the revival machine shouldn't work because 8-ball, the one in space, is still alive. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with 8-ball. Like, will we keep recovering the robot 8-ball, and then we just have robot 8-ball just hanging around now, just the main 8-ball, or if the 8-ball isn't gonna come back, and the next episode, some chaos as to, like, we just don't see 8-ball. That's gonna be an interesting little thing to see. So that's DIBS 4. That is DIBS Ep.30. What do I think of that? That episode was good. I like that episode. It was pretty solid. It was a little bit goofy. Like, no team, all right, no team at all, it ended up with a strategy. Like, the only team that just properly, I guess, had a strategy to actually paint and then painted was the team with the lipstick at the end of the day. They had a plan. Yo, lipstick, just kiss the wall. And then they did that and it worked, right? But with so many teams, they didn't do anything. And the last two teams that ended up being out for Elam, they did nothing. Like, they just didn't paint the wall at all. One team was entirely distracted. The other team just failed miserably at the waiting game, right? So a lot of teams didn't exactly take the challenge too seriously, and even the teams that did end up doing it barely did anything either. Like, one of the teams who painted barely, they get there because they used the magnet. Like, it's not exactly a incredible thing here that they're doing. However, yeah, that is gonna be DIBS for. In general, it was solid. I like that there's things happening. Some characters are getting a bit of arcs now, in the way that they are now. We got things that, like, they just can't be retconned that easily. Like 8-ball being a robot replacement was gonna go on with that. Kit Kat and the whole leader team, that team's being pretty interesting. Even stuff like the Pumpkin Saga, with the gardener, and even debatably stuff like lips, the hands, the blueprint, right? Those fellas having a bit of backstory added onto them. But like in general, I do like it because it was one of the things that was my main critique in the other dibs. It was like, okay, stuff's cool, but we need arcs to happen. You know, this with these casts, this like 4 to 8 range of episodes. Where like, okay, we've learned who the characters are. Now do stuff with them. You know, like first couple of episodes, get to know the characters, get to learn what they are, get to learn what they're doing, get to learn what they like, what they don't like, what they are. That now that we've learned what they are, of course, you need to add things to them. You know, they need to do things, they need to have plans, they need to have strategies, they need to have arcs, they need to have friends, they need to have enemies, they need to just have things in general that they're doing. And they are in fact doing that. They are in fact doing that with a bunch of these characters, which is going to be interesting. Of course, Scorpio Lolly is a little bit on standby. People don't really know what's going on with them. But I like what's going on with the Kit Kat leadership thing. Especially, but I also think that some other teams are quite interesting as well. So it's gonna be interesting for sure. One thing that I don't really know about the DIBS production process, right? One thing that I was a bit wondering is that like because I don't know this. Okay, so each section is just done by the next person. But your question is, how planned is it? Because of course there's no direct script, there's no direct written plan. But just because there's no written plan doesn't mean that conversations can't happen, right? Because it's like somebody can draw a scene and it's like, okay, so fellas, I was thinking that maybe later this could happen. You know, that's not necessarily a plan, that's not a script, that's not an anything. It's just coordination, right? Like I don't know how coordinated it is, right? Like if somebody draws a scene where like something is like they go to the paint store and I was like, okay, my plan was that the paint store base happens, or even if it's like, okay, fellas, how about we eliminate these two? You know, I don't know how much like questions and asking stuff like, hey, should I make them get blended? You know, like I don't know how much checking there is, like how much is like coordination with the other team members there is when somebody's making a scene. Because I'm sure if they would want to just make a scene without any other people having a say on it and stuff, right, or like bouncing ideas or anything, they could. But I'm wondering how much they do that anyways, because you know it's kind of the type of thing when you're making a scene, especially when you're wanting to make a character arc happen, whenever you're imagining something, right? When you're making something, you're imagining how it's gonna go. You kind of want to communicate that to the next person a little bit. You want to be like, okay, so I was thinking you do this. You know, like they don't have to agree with it, but at least the plan and the conversation is there, it's happening. I don't know if that's a thing that happens with her, or if they go proper full YOLO mode, but yeah. DIBS is really interesting. Have you noticed I've talked about this for way longer than I have any right to? Let's stop the conversation here on DIBS 4 right here, right now at the way too long mark of the video. And move on to the next thing. All right. DIBS is cool. I enjoy DIBS. All right. So, our next show that we're going to be taking a look at is titled Google's Diplomatic Show because, of course, the Google's Diplomatic Show yesterday had its episode 4 release. All right. Last time we were on Google's Diplomatic Show 3B. We survived in a forest at the cost of certain lives, and eventually we ended up having the team up for elimination be the NATO team or the NATO Reload team with being sorry, wait, no, sorry, ended up being up for elimination with the Peacock, the Fishbowl, the Lemon Demon, and then some other fella ended up being up for elimination. However, we won't get to see that today because episode 4 was apparently a non-competition episode featuring entirely the eliminated contestants. They had found some sort of weird little room and maybe even left their own dimension into the IRL dimension. Not really sure what's going on. We're gonna have to find out. Let's watch it. Let's go. Okay, I have just finished watching Google's Diplomatic Show 4, The Root of the Problem. So, that was pretty interesting. Now, we end up returning with the computer fella's iPod and the laptop because why? Because if I'm not mistaken, in episode 3, they die, right? They sacrifice themselves for the sake of giving a new look to the Fiery Junior. Is that what happens? Right? So they like power the machine. So they decide to do that. But they're dead, and the machines cannot get recovered, which means that they're now in the death range, not because they're eliminated, just because they're dead. So they end up joining Pizza and the Snake in there. Also the Bart Simpson, the whatever, the mustache man with the cool mustache, to make the group of 5 that will now be exploring. What will they be exploring for? Because yeah, we end up having the intro again. Still waiting for the renewed intro. I want Drive in the intro because they'd be cool. The intro's still fired. I ain't gonna lie. Eventually they're in a hallway. They're in an infinite hallway with 1 billion doors. Doors everywhere, things everywhere, everything everywhere. And then eventually they start opening doors and entering various places. This concept reminds me of something. So, you know, the Amazing Digital Circus, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the first episode. Was it the first episode? It was one of the episodes of the Amazing Digital Circus. There was like a place where just Pomni was just looking through a lot of doors, and each one of them had a different random thing going on. Like a different, completely random environment going on. It all was not interconnected. It all didn't make sense. Some of them didn't have the floor either, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a thing. So it does remind me a little bit of that. It also, just in the way that it's environmentally, reminds me a little bit of The Exit, because it's kind of blue back wallpaper, a lot of doors that are brown, right? It's not in The Exit like conceptually, but it's The Exit in terms of a little bit how it's designed, which is from the Four Lands over in BFB. So eventually they find a car dealership to Google's car. Battery ends up being gives them the car as long as they find the pieces to fix the car. So they decide to go and progressively figure out how to, do that. But then eventually they all split up and find different little things, such as a wheel, if I'm not mistaken. Then no, a windshield. iPod finds a windshield when debating to their angels, the angel on the shoulders, the devil on the shoulders. They're all doing that thing. I think they end up deciding that they will eventually take revenge on somebody. Bart ends up finding a wheel at the bar, because it's a bar hosted by Bart. So there's a freaking wall called Bart, and then there's Bart Simpson. That's Bart Simpson. So then they're getting the wheel because Bart Reynolds is called Bart Reynolds. So they end up getting, they have a name tag with Bart Reynolds on it, so they end up being like, hey, okay, and then they get the wheel. And then there's also a headlight, which the loud talk guy said, I don't remember how. So, and eventually they end up using the car battery of battery themselves to power up the car. I like the gags in this episode. This episode is quite fun. So the thing about this episode, is that, yeah, it doesn't have to deal with a competition, which means it just kind of gets to go off. It gets to entirely be written based on like its humor, the way that it is, the way that it plays, the way that it occurs in a way, which allows it to be more focused on directly interactions on humor, especially because it's dealing with such a small cast. So it takes advantage of it, right? Because there's not going to be too many episodes where you get to do that because you're hosting an object show. But in this case, right, where it's a non-competition show, we only take a look at the eliminated contestants goofing about, doing stuff, right? It ends up going pretty well. I was originally debating, because I was confused, that it wasn't going to be great, because there was going to be a cast of 3 people, right? There's going to be 3 people in theory in there, which would be the Pizza, the Snake, and Bart Reynolds, which would be a pretty horrendous trio. However, the thing that I didn't calculate last time is that apparently the dead machines, they joined them. Because the thing that I was confused is that what I was originally thinking is that the eliminated contestants were gonna be like because they weren't eliminated, they were just dead, which means that, like, I thought that, if you're dead, you're dead, I guess, in a way. Like, the eliminated contestants, where the eliminated people go after getting eliminated, but I didn't exactly clock in that that was gonna be the case also for the dead contestants that didn't necessarily get eliminated. So now with a laptop and iPod, then that makes it pretty interesting, because you can at least play a trio with them And the pizza viewing snake can also speak now here because they don't have the weird language. So then there's kind of there's a trio, right? And in this case, we can have shenanigans coming on with them. I like the debating of the pineapple on pizza, the iPod pulling up the data from Google Sheets. Just saying. um, but yeah, Hawaiians and stuff. They end up finding another room. One of the rooms ends up having another set of infinite rooms in it. They end up adventuring around, finding a bunch of places, cannibals and stuff. I have no idea who the hell the freaking, because apparently they're also a cannibal, but I don't remember. But I don't know who this host guy is. They look like a police badge. Do they eat police badges? Um, Eventually, they find a cool little serene waterfall, so they stay there while Pete ends up running away. Then they're finding a freaking wasteland. Reminds me of Deltarune. The freaking what is it called? Snow, the falling snow thing. That right, it's like TV static. Reminds me of that area. Um, However, eventually they end up leaving and then finding another school setting where Laptop finds the other laptop, the laptop family reunion, because all the laptops were built by a factory in Guangzhou. Okay, Guangzhou mentioned, which is all right. Look, I don't mind the gag because oh yeah, the computers are they were constructed in a factory. Something that I don't think is honestly covered enough in object shows. Like where did the objects come from? If it's a technological object, it was built, right? It was built by either a person in a factory. It was built by a factory, eventually shipped out. Right? Like I do like imagining the idea that like they don't necessarily just spawn into existence. Like okay, you were built in a way. So I do like it when objects just given a mention, right? That like oh yeah, you were a piece of technology, which means that you didn't just spawn in. Um, so that's cool. Eventually, they end up coming along to try to find the friend, which Snake, which by the way disappeared. Trying to find them in a bathroom, end up having a kitchen, end up having a bunch of other places. This episode. Okay, how long did it take for this episode to get made? This episode took about 3 weeks. That is good. That is an impressive amount of time, I must say, because considering how many things are necessary to make an episode like this work. This episode is the type of episode that sounds like a good idea, but probably when making this episode sounds like a nightmare. Because making this episode proper gives off vibes of oh my god. Because nearly every section needs a new backdrop. The amount of work that a background artist would need right, to be able to just have enough scenes for the thing. It's like okay, so we're gonna need a bathroom, we're gonna need a random kitchen, we're gonna need a random waterfall, we're gonna need a random car dealership, we're gonna need another random background for food, we're gonna need a random background for another building and this building and that building. There's so many buildings right, where it's like oh my god, surely this takes 1,000,000 years. I don't know if all the backgrounds that they're using are theirs. Sometimes you can borrow from BFDI or whatever. I didn't recognize any of them personally, so if they are other stuff. Eventually, they open a door called 666, which leads them into a very blue landscape, but an only labeled door apparently. Ended up being all 666, and there's a refrigerator that is open and shining. Eventually, one door gets closed, and oh my god, it's Google! Google is there. It's like, hey, what are you doing? This is confidential. Don't open it until it was already open. Google, I'm not gonna lie, shockingly trust them, which gotta be number one thing which I was not expecting, like at all. I immediately thought that Google was gonna like as soon as laptop was like this was already open, Google was gonna like bullshit, die. that just feels like the most Google thing to do. But no, Google actually surprisingly believes them. And then Google goes to say, no, this can't be happening. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. And then we end up, um, you know, friggin' leaving as Google is panicking over it. So, interesting thing. They still did not find the snake. No idea where the snake went, to be honest. I don't think we get to see it. I think there was a scene with the snake in it, but we don't eventually get to see it. What was the scene with the snake in it? I think there was like a snake with another snake or something along that category. One of them, anyways. But eventually, yeah, What was in there? I don't know. Probably a very like important food item was there. Some item that had to be in the refrigerator. It's like, this is the golden cheese of wisdom. It has to be stored at negative 23 degrees, otherwise it will not be good. It would melt and explode. Something like that. And then somebody stole it, and it said, "No, you stole the cheese of wisdom." Is what I'm predicting is like roughly what's going on here. Um, but yeah, then the episode ends. General opinion, it was solid. We got to see them kind of frolicking about. They didn't necessarily. Okay, here's the deal. They didn't discover much, I will say, because it's like, other than this fridge thing, right, which is debatably important, I mean, Google seems to care a lot about it, and Google's very important. So I don't know if this fridge that they found is going to be a big plot element, right, or it's going to be something goofy like the cheese of wisdom, as I mentioned, right. But depending on how big of a plot element it is, it could be a little bit of a detail of a thing, right, that ends up happening. So, yeah, that is a thing. However, if it's not that, they don't actually end up doing that much in terms of solving anything. Because remember, they were just kind of adventuring for the sake of adventuring, maybe try to find a way back or whatever. So they were adventuring. They don't really find much. They end up sort of trying to fix the car half the time. They eventually fix the car to go faster, and then they end up trying to find the snake because they don't know where the snake went. They end up finding some laptop rubberins, which I guess that's a lore element. I don't think it's gonna be that important. Uh, and then yeah, they eventually find the 666 door with the fridge of importance that is important. So yeah, it just kind of depends on how important the fridge is. I'm predicting that the fridge is gonna be important because if the fridge wasn't important, I don't think this episode needs to exist. Not because I don't like this episode. This episode was fun. I enjoyed the interactions. I think they did a lot of jokes that I personally enjoyed, like using the car battery on the car because they needed a car battery. Like that, like those types of jokes, or the whole like cannibalism thing. Or Bart. I like the Bart joke with the Bart. But like I think a lot of the jokes in this episode were quite fun, and it was a very enjoyable watch. But I'm just saying that from like a lore perspective, I don't know why this episode would have happened if this fridge wasn't important. So I'm gonna be guessing that this fridge is important. However, I do also completely understand that the fridge isn't important because Google just like that. Google's a hilarious over exaggerator, so they would absolutely over exaggerate it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. That's all I could really say. It was a fun episode. I don't really know what I'm expecting is going to happen. Apparently, Google's Diplomatic Show 5 is going to be resuming into the regular show shenanigans. So we probably won't get to see too much of what's going on with the fridge here unless Google directly makes it part of the challenge. Maybe Google's like, I have lost the cheese of wisdom. Go get me a new one. Or whatever. I'm really going on about the cheese of wisdom because it's the one example that I've invented. But it can be anything. But yeah, I really enjoy this show. I think more people should watch it. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, this show's just solid. There is absolutely zero things wrong with this show. It's pretty unique. It's pretty inventive. I do still wish they had originally kept up that format that they made in the first episode that they eventually scrapped, because I still think that format was kind of sick. I mean, of course, this episode didn't have elimination, but I hope that it's either brought back or is on a different show someday, because I would have enjoyed seeing that format play itself out more properly, more into a middle game, because I think that type of format with contestant voting as second last and viewer voting as first last would have genuinely been interesting if you consider that in the early game it doesn't make much sense, but especially if you enter the middle game and characters start knowing each other, they start forming more relations, more bonds, more things end up happening, then the little contestant voting actually gets more interesting. So we can have an interesting case of contestant voting where you really don't want to get second to last, because otherwise it's like, for example, a mean character might want to tank completely so that they end up last, so that they don't end up second to last because the other characters dislike them, right? Or not necessarily. Well, in that case, they probably just get eliminated anyways. But like, that type of thing is what I'm imagining. So yeah, I would personally, honestly, try to bring it back. But other than that, the show is good. The show is very solid, and it's an enjoyable watch. The thumbnail for this video is great. I really like how iPod's drawn in it, especially. They look amazing. And yeah, that's all we got to say. Good job. Good episode. Enjoyed it. Next show that we're going to be taking a look at is, well, the finale of New Object Show is released. New Object Show is the show that we covered at this point quite a while ago. I mean, time has passed. However, a show made by DaRedPanda. I remember I praised its animation quite a lot. If I'm not mistaken, it's a remake of a 5-year-old version of that very show, the New Object Show. Last time Garbage got eliminated, got very upset at a banana, even murdered them. Sun and Plug were the last few people remaining. Which one of them ended up winning the show? Well, I guess we will have to find out, as I did not watch the show that this is remaking. Well, that means that, we're fully celibate. What a word. And we will watch it. Today's your lucky day. Let's go. I just watched New Object Show Season 1, Episode 4, and, spoiler warning, banana! What the? Oh my god. Okay, so apparently 2 votes were cast. So 2. I don't remember how many casts how many were cast the other time. It was like 12 or 13 or something. But 2 votes were cast, according to that, which means that all of them get 1. I must say that I really like the gag that happens because, of course, Pluggy only speaks in numbers. So Sun asks what were the votes, and then Pluggy repeats, and then Pluggy answers 12.1818, repeating as if those were the votes. I don't know if that's an intentional gag, but whatever gag it is kind of funny. So they both end up tying uh quite badly. I like Pluggy because, when you have this character that can that speaks words despite not really speaking words, the gags that you can make are quite funny. 13 being both what and okay, but then if you just say one, it means a by itself. Okay, cool. Banana ends up rejoining and winning because they respawn somehow. Phone didn't respawn them, which is interesting. So they just get respawned. You're just in the void now. Is there a void respawning machine magic thing? Because of course, the main thing that I'm imagining is II, right? When you have imagining II in the way that me phone got to respawn the characters, right? Got to revive them. But in this case, that phone didn't do anything. Banana just revived itself. So that's rather interesting, but good job, Banana. You win! OMG 11.5. Garbage is also a girl now because the swooshes of their hair, which is not garbage, actually hair, ends up being also an interesting thing. I will say, mildly awkward thing. Look, I don't usually mention any of this stuff, but the video is 50 seconds long, and I gotta have things to talk about. I do gotta point out how the song cuts off into the studio's outro a little bit weirdly. But yeah, other than that, what did I think? Of course, this was pretty cool. I always think that this show is animated pretty damn excellently. The way it moves and the characters moves is very, very smooth. I genuinely, no, I absolutely think there is a lot of potential in this person animating in this style like this. He can absolutely go places, right? They seem to be relatively slow by themselves. All right, I will say this. However, for the possibilities of eventually making it to a crew of a bigger show, I would absolutely look at that possibility. I'm not sure, but shows have animation auditions relatively often. Even the big boys end up having some auditions happening. So I would absolutely consider signing up for those. I know I said it the other time, but I am going to regurgitate this statement right here because it's been a couple of weeks and I feel like saying it again. So yeah, I just think that it's absolutely a worth it thing to try because this is a very high quality animation. You can proper see the workings of something. If you imagine that it had its own background and stuff, it can genuinely just pass off as one of the top tier shows because of the way that they're animated. So especially because it doesn't just do basic stuff like movement. Like you can see how the loading screen into the phone, fade out back in, right? The way that they turn the back of the phone, right? All the assets and stuff. Like there's some important there's some high level stuff going on in this animation. Like I absolutely do think that there's good things going on, and I do think, all right, I'm not sure, but I do think an animation crew would appreciate it. Anyways, good job on the remake. We'll have to see. I'm not sure exactly, of course, how accurate this is to what happened in the main, in the old Object Show. I guess if this is called New Object Show, what's the old one called? Is it called Old Object? Is it just called Object Show? Is that just the name? um. So yeah, I mean, that is what I've really got. That's what I've got to say here. It was cool. It was epic. Hoping to see more. It'll be interesting to see if season 2. Hold on. Okay, let me look at this channel for a moment. Okay, I know I'm yapping way too much already. So, Object Show definitive. Yeah, there's been a lot of seasons. I wonder when. Yeah. Okay. So Object Show. Yeah, it was just called Object Show. Okay. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see if like just because season 1 was a remake, is season 2 of it also gonna be a remake, right? Because like are we just gonna do a remake word for word? Because if you think about it, that would make it very tough. Because so here's the second Object Show. If I'm not missing it, there's like a third season. Yeah, Object Show definitive. Then there might even be a fourth. Yeah, Object Show 2. So in general, we end up having quite a big, like a lot of things to remake. So I'm wondering if this show's ever gonna separate itself from the mainness of whatever it had going on a couple of years ago, or if it is gonna remain entirely on the pathway of being a remake, because that is quite a lot of stuff. Anyways, that's all I've got to say. Keep it up. Your animations are great, and I'll be interested to see what happens in, I guess, New Object Show. See you tomorrow. All right. All right, the next show that we're going to be taking a look at is Balls, because yeah, Balls had its 6th episode release a couple of days ago. We're already technically behind it to it. Last time we ended up having some new hosts, a red speaker box, and a mini Lego brick from a different show. Why? Because their main host was apparently off hosting ODA, or hosting BFA, sorry. Which is wait, to say ODA, that's a different show. Oh my god. So it's a BFA, which is a different thing. We end up having a challenge which I don't really enjoy that much because it was relatively not interestingly animated. We have a bunch of people up for elimination. I think I predicted the shitty ball to get out. We'll have to find out. Episode 6 is called Getting a Bit Serious. Let's go. Alright, so I have just watched Ball 6. So our host is back, our lovely little host, the Red Ball, which I really like the voice of. They're so goofy. We end up having an elimination scene, which ends up being, if I'm not mistaken, the different lyrics version of the points are gone version of the BFDI cake and steak theme. The points are gone, we are free of the now, but we move on, right? Something like that. So we end up having a version of that for the elimination time. We don't have an animation of it. Unfortunate. I mean, we could have technically just traced over the BFTI, but fair enough. 25 likes and 41 dislikes. Cyan Ball ends up being safe with 25 whatever. Wait, how many? With like 1 million likes. Then they end up getting glue, and then they also end up getting clay thrown at them because they're the first one saved. So good job, you're absolutely cooking. They are quite upset because they got clay thrown on their face. The purple ball, who's just chilling, ends up getting it, and then so does Assy Yellow Ball. Yeah, as expected, the shitty ball gets out because like you make a okay, so you make a character join, all right, cool, sure. Then you make the character not do shit on to forever, like they just don't do anything, and then it's like okay. Sure, they'll get eliminated because it's like okay, we debut the character so that you can be a character, but we debuted a character and it debatably done less than the characters that didn't join. It's like, bro, what the hell, So then I'm getting eliminated, and then they drop down to the underworld or whatever that has actual landscaping in it, which I don't know is crazy. The first time the world has just been purely white. And then the other balls, orange, blue, light blue, they've been working on trying to stack up and try to get out. I am gonna say this is giving a bit too much BFB to my eyes. It's a little bit too. It's a bit too on the nose, you know. Like it's giving BFB to the level where they use literally exactly the same music as well. They use the same song than they do in BFB when doing the same exact story beat, or at least story concept. And then in general, there's just been a bunch of other BFB and BFDI inspired things as well, such as the elimination theme, that it ends up being, I don't know. So eventually, the challenge ends up being to cover up or stop the storm. There's a patch on the ground, and we end up gluing the cyan ball to the stack. However, they're safe because they were technically glued onto the stack. That is a good question. That was a good debate because the acid yellow ball ends up having the idea of placing the cyan ball on there to stop the crack, right? And which means that they did it. However, they weren't the one who physically did it. Like the reason why it was stopped was because of the cyan ball. So I do agree with this line of reasoning. All right. Even though I'm not necessarily a massive fan of it, I would have made them both safe personally. However, fair enough. Everybody's up for elimination except them. It's interesting. I'll be curious to know if these two hosts end up leaving. Like if the red speaker box and the mini Lego brick end up leaving. Because they were there to be a replacement for the red ball. But now the red ball's back from hosting BFA mini or whatever it was. Um, Theoretically, they should be okay to leave. You know, they go back to BFA land. But not this episode. I wonder if maybe the next or so they'll leave. Or they'll just stay there. Maybe they're just going to be here. Because, I mean, we did have the new elimination song. So maybe they're going to use it a couple of times. So, my prediction, probably Acid Yellow Ball gets the prize. Acid Yellow Ball's got an interesting possibility where they could win the prize and the elimination because both of those are valid in the sense that they both they got cheated out of a win because of their chat tactic. However, they were also, I guess, mean to do that to the sandball, right? However, they were mean to do that to the sandball. However, this mean thing led them to being safe and stuff. So I don't think that it's that mean of a thing. So I would personally keep Acid Yellow Ball around. So they would win the prize, and then probably Purple Ball would get eliminated because even though I believe they're more interesting than the Magenta Ball, I do think that they're not. That they really didn't do that much in this episode, so they probably get eliminated. In this case, we're just kind of being less interesting. By the way, why is it not called Magenta Ball? The freaking code name is M for Magenta, but then it's the pink ball. Like, please, M. Come on. It's whatever. But yeah, that's ball 6. It's it's better than the last episode. I do think that we have that the show did fall off a little bit, I think, but it's climbing itself back up. There's some things happening. We're maybe doing a little bit too much BFB beats. I would probably relax it a little bit, go more for, try to like take the concept, variate it more than just, oh, they're eventually gonna escape, right? Variate it a little bit more, do something more interesting. But other than that, yeah, that's all I've really got to say. Next. Alright, so the next show that we're going to be taking a look at is Battle of the Objects, because Battle of the Objects had its episode 5A release. I'm telling you, so much stuff released in a couple of days from the show creators. This object Keepup was mandatory, even though it's not been that long since the last object Keepup. However, this episode called 5A is titled Escape. Just a reminder, last time we did a Halloween episode about getting candy, and the team with a marker, envelope, book, and I believe hat or beanie ended up being up for elimination. We have a new host that replaced the previous host. I'm curious if they're going to be sticking around for the long run, as they've already had 2 episodes now. Episode 5A is titled Escape. Let's go. Alright, that was Battle of the Objects 5A Escape. So, we have a new redesign machine, which, well, redesigns our contestants. So, they get a couple of redesigns, which are they better? Yes, however, we're not polished. That's the main thing that's going on with these new redesigns that I do have to criticize. For example, you see this brick, they're cool, however, there's always, as you can tell, this 1 pixel or 2 pixel of gap between where it's not been cropped correctly between the outline and the shape itself, where it's just empty, and that way the background is poking through. That's not accurate. That's not what that would look like. So it ended up sort of weighing a little bit badly on the design. This is also true for other designs, such as the host himself. As you can see, the red, the bucket too hasn't probably been bucket. Like, see, there's pixels that are missing, right? Which makes the general outline be just more lacking. This is true for the beanie as well. This is true for a lot of people, to be honest. So, I mean, I wouldn't usually point this out. However, since we're doing redesigns anyways, I do think that it is something on the mind and it is something that should be pointed out because, yeah. Anyways, we end up having Envelope and Beanie get eliminated. I don't know with what votes, how many votes they got or whatever, but they get voted out. I don't really know. I honestly don't think that there's too much, honestly, like decision making being done behind a lot of these qualifications, that elimination, sorry, because like, I'm pretty sure these characters didn't even speak last episode, so yeah, it's kind of tough. Yeah, we end up having an intro. It's a pretty solid intro. We get to see everybody's designs, and here, especially as they're up close, you can probably see what I'm talking about. Like, you see the brick, you see how there's like these little gaps in between the colors, right? Where it happens with the envelope as well. There's gaps between the colors. Like, it just is a thing that is happening with a bunch of these designs. I'm pretty sure it's true for the pebble as well. It's just a global thing, right? So I would recommend trying to fix those, and then it'll just look a lot cleaner. So now we're in the elimination box. That is the underwater elimination box. They're like, nah, I'm gonna break out of here. Envelope is coming in here with the attitude. Absolute shout out to Envelope. Envelope like, hey, you can't eliminate me and put me in a box underwater. So I absolutely respect that. They throw the triangle, it ends up cracking the wall, water floods in, and eventually they get out. I, to be fair, I'm think the shot of the freaking envelope like swimming up was recorded in the bathroom because it's more echoey. However, it's pretty good voice out to be honest. I was kind of convinced for a moment the envelope was almost about to drown. Then they need to get to the island that is in the sky. Where is that island? I don't know. But in the meantime, we have a recover machine, which is apparently a person. Shout out to recover machines that are people. Everybody gets recovered. Then the envelope has a debate with Triangle because I took you long enough. I must say, this is a little bit interesting because, okay, I mean, this is actually an interesting question. Can you feel the passage of time if you're dead? Because like it's a little bit of a debate, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe, and let's say envelope took a long time to revive you. How do you know? Because you were dead, no? There's not like a clock in the afterlife. Like, what is going on? Like, is there a clock in the afterlife? Are you like spectating? Like, what is going on? How do you know that it took a long time? Or are you just assuming when you get back to life that, oh no, yeah, I mean, surely they must have taken a long time. So I'm going to call them out on it. Like, wait, hold on. How do you, like, where is this information coming from? How do you know this? When do you know this? What is going on? But it does pose an interesting question about like how, does it feel like time has passed when you get revived? That it's not a question that many object shows ask, which I think is an interesting question to ask. I feel like usually they go with the presumption that it doesn't, kind of like when somebody wakes up from a coma, right? They don't they don't feel that time has necessarily passed in the same way, so they'll usually be like, oh yeah, it's 2015, and it's like, no, it's 2025. So I feel like that's how they usually go with it. But yeah, they end up having a debate, and then Beanie finds a treehouse. OMG. No, I don't know what it is. The video cuts out right as they find a treehouse. I don't think the treehouse has anything to do with the shine. The treehouse also has a face, which makes it imply, does everything live? Does this face mean that everything is living? Is that what's going on? Like I don't know, to be honest, but yeah. Like, huh? the treehouse ends up being it, and then we'll have 5B, which hopefully will have the challenge. Apparently, it's supposed to release on the 30th of November, so it is gonna be interesting to see that. I will make sure to keep an eye on it. Yet again, I would recommend probably just whatever challenge it is, have every team show up in it, see what they're doing in the challenge rather than in something like the candy challenge that we didn't get to see anything. I also do I am gonna maybe debate a little bit. Okay, so we have backgrounds, basically. Backgrounds have been added, right, to this show. They weren't there before. We were in a white void. Now there's a background. We have just simply taken the background from BFB a majority of the time, right? And then kept that. Look, I don't think that's bad too much because it allows you to maybe stray away from it. It's just, I think it's more interesting than a white void, and Jack and Jellyfy don't mind. Right, so I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, and especially like how we're not always in that backdrop, like stuff, for example, the water section. I think the water was relatively well. But again, you see, even this water has the freaking line in the middle that's like transparent, like I don't know what's going on with these lines that don't quite fill out the thing. It is an issue, and you will sometimes see it in my thumbnails, but yeah, the thumbnails aren't moving, so I don't consider it that big of a deal. But yeah, that's all for 5A. It's an interesting little episode. They've escaped. While they're escaping, I guess we'll have to see if they're eventually going to invade the challenge. Maybe the challenge is going to be to, I don't know, defeat the eliminated contestant. That would be cool. Send them back, eliminate them. And then we can have some little interaction going like, no, don't eliminate me. I was your friend, right? And then some interesting things can happen. But other than that, I have no idea. I'll be waiting for 5B, apparently scheduled for the 30th of November. That's all that I got to say about Battle of the Objects. Keep it up. Next up, we are going to be taking a look at everybody's favorite show to say the name of, AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS, which has its episode 4 release yesterday. Created by Dreamy Fiery 2763. We a couple of weeks ago took a look at AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS 1, 2, 3. It was a it was a joke show of the joke variety. We had a couple of characters eliminated, and last time we had a debut with tons of people to choose from. I think I originally wanted maybe the Stop Sign to get in alongside, I think the 1989 album I thought was pretty cool, and maybe the Raid Bottle. But yeah, we'll find out who ends up debuting in AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS 4. I will end up trying to find as many ways to say AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS as possible. Alright, let's go. Alright, we have just come back from watching AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS 4. AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS 4 ends up having a new intro, in fact. It's a much slower paced intro, actually, happening roughly about through the course of 20 seconds rather than the last one, which was about like 5. We end up having every character here, and then we have debut. I do like the interesting things that happen here with the text-to-speech fella here from Walmart. I do like that they're sort of turned into song here for the debut time. And I do like how they make them say AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS to make me not look insane for just wanting to say AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS every time. We end up having a bunch of fellas here. The Stop Sign, a very interesting character. What is going on with this Stop Sign? I don't know, but we won't get to find out because they're going to be staying well away from the competition with only one vote. Because usually Stop Sign characters are so loud. So in this case, having a Stop Sign character is not loud. It just fucking looks possessed. It's like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. I would have definitely voted them. Anyways, Walmart ends up just saying A, which is a great text-to-speech. Then we end up having the rejoiner Diction. Good job, Diction. Maybe Dictionary. I don't remember what you were. You said I think you said something, but it was like you're like a book fella, but instead of being a book, you're like a dictionary. Which is fair. So they end up existing. you're voiced by somebody else, if I'm not mistaken. Like you actually have a voice actor, which most characters don't. I don't know who the voice actor is because it does have two people featured, as you can tell by the title, Objectly Downrex and It's Shadow 493. Not sure who's who. No, like I genuinely just have no idea. I guess whoever it is, because they're not in. There's no credits. Will I hope they did all right. Okay. Um, and then they end up licking the iceberg PNG with freaking the it's more like a JPEG, right? Because it doesn't have it has the background of a checkered board. Everybody else is up for elimination. I do find it, of course, a little bit unfortunate that everybody else is up for elimination. Why? Because, they haven't done anything. They didn't really get to do anything in the last episode because it was the debutant episode, and they don't get to do anything in this episode because the debuter joins it immediately, does a challenge, which means that they can do the challenge. Which means that we haven't actually seen Scully, Candle, or Himshies do much for like ages at this point. I think these voting icons are new. They're pretty solid. Um, so yeah, that's kind of just the thing about it. I would have maybe shown them a little bit more. It is a joke show, so I do judge it less. I don't really mind that much. However, it is a thing. There's also an interesting text saying November 17th, 2025, just that low opacity in the background the entire time. You can tell because the video ends with it. Not sure why, when actually voting ends on November 18th. That might be an editing mistake. But yeah, overall it was a pretty solid episode. I do like was how they're using the Walmart voice, and I do like the fact that there's a voice actor for the new character, and the stuff with like the stop sign and everything. I do like what they're doing. I would have maybe shown the other contestants a little bit more. However, if we want to make shorter little episodes, we're all good with that as well, in this case. So yeah, that's all I really got to say about everybody's favorite series. I was been roused, but I need to stop. It's too good. It's too good. AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS. Okay? Somebody make an AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS song. Okay? AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS pum pum pum. AOSBNRAOSBIAJOS pum pum. It's just fire. Who needs Tally Hall when you got me beatboxing? Alright, I'm blabbering on nonsense at this point. Let's go next. Next up, it's, the One Take Object Show. The One Take Object Show, which we covered yet again roughly around a week ago. We covered episode 1 and 2. The gimmick with this show is that it is recorded entirely in one take, and whatever goes, goes. Last time we baked the cake, and Scribbles ends up losing for their team after cheating and using a cake mix, which does not count, apparently. Okay. Who's gonna get eliminated? I have got no idea. Let's find out in episode 3, titled I'm Taking the Kids Pink. Oh no. Alright, let's go. Okay, I have just finished watching the One Take Object Show 3. So, okay, a very interesting thing happens with this take, alright? Is that, so basically, it starts off good. Okay? Like, the thing about it is it starts off pretty damn solid. The thing about it is that every time what happens is, because this makes perfect sense, it starts and then it deteriorates. Because what happens is that before you do it, you have a plan, right? Surely you have a plan of what to say, in a way. You have a plan of what you're going to do. However, the thing is, you have a plan of what you're going to do in the immediate future. However, the future of like what's going to happen in the middle of the challenge, like what is Popcorn going to do in the challenge, right? For example, it's not exactly going to happen immediately. So you have the immediate idea of what the concept's going to be. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to have the wife, and we're going to show the wife, and then the wife going to send a letter, and there'll be a divorce and whatever, right? So that's all cool. However, we end up slowly deteriorating throughout the course of the challenge, and you can see because the breaks between things of thinking to say just kind of end up taking longer. And it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm also trying to figure out if is it one take, like literally one take, or is it multi-take? Because or is it like one take as in what each section is one take, because of course we have the initial section and then we go intro. So I'm curious, is the post intro take the different take than the original, or is it the original and then split into the intro and other section? Because that is the one thing that I don't really know about this show that does kind of matter, right? Like, is everything said done in the same take and then audio and things are added in the middle, or is it take until break, and then you do the next take for the next section, right? So then it's still one take, but yeah. Anyway, Star gets eliminated. They got scammed. Their freaking code was 6-7. So yeah, I mean, people who don't like it are eventually gonna be on it. So the challenge is to find the worst thing ever, and then the thing that they like the best wins. That challenge makes no sense. What does that mean? Find the worst thing, but the thing that I like the best? So I'm sorry, is it uh, you're supposed to not like it. If it's the worst thing, you're supposed to find it hideous. So whatever the most hideous thing is would win. But if you like it, that would make it not hideous anymore. So if it's not hideous anymore, then it's fine, no? So that's kind of the debate that I'm not really understanding here. But I mean, okay then, I guess. A ghost ends up finding some weird plushie talking Ren Hook from Ren and Stump from the what is this? The Ren and Stimpy? I don't know, but it's a plushie that talks and it isn't great. Some other fellas do stuff like grabbing a tomato, and then Popcorn does a joke where they grab popcorn because haha cannibalism. And then however, before they can even submit anything, we don't even see, I think, what Test Tube gets. Test Tube's just stinking all the time. The pink ends up getting the plush from Ghost first, and goes, yes, this is the best thing, and they are all happy looking at it. There's some interesting animation sauce coming in. I do quite enjoy it, how, like, the pressed pink has, like, a darker tone to it, and just the way that the certain poses were made. Especially, yeah, I thought Pink was animated quite well in this episode. I think they did Pink justice for sure, especially because of, Pink gave a lot of emotions. Anyways, the challenge doesn't matter because we're doing a debut. Because yeah, we have some contestants. Cookie Dough, which is a cookie dough. We have Rules Card, which Rules Card. Then we have Glovey, which is pretty interesting. They're apparently the best character. Ray from Ray Studios, Bob Sponge, SD Card, and Peppermint, and Pirate Map as well. Which one of these would I find the most interesting? Maybe Glove, because Glovey looks quite a lot like an Algebraian, I must say, and the idea of having a potentially egocentric Algebraian on the one take show could allow for some fun stuff to happen. Because other than that, I don't know what you would do. Like, if you added Rules Card, I don't really know what jokes you would make it. With Glove, I feel that it would be a lot more intuitive, a lot more immediate. It would make a lot more sense from the get-go, right? So I think that I think that it would make sense, to be honest. And what a shot at the end of Ghost being dead. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that's all I really got to say here. These one takes, they're pretty solid. If I'm not, as far as I remember of the other takes, this is the best one for sure. It's the one that was the most overall coherent. Like, it had itself a plot line running through it, which it had a pretty good job at doing this take. But in general, of course, you can't judge it too harshly because it's freaking one take. It was one take. Okay, that's how much it took. So in general, there's not too much I can necessarily discuss about it. It just was that, you know. But it was a pretty solid take, and I hope to see more stuff along those notes, along those lines, because it was pretty solid, and I especially like how Pink was animated. I thought there was a lot of potential in that. All right, that's all. And that is going to be all for today's installment of Object Catchup. It's another little mini video. I can't lie, it's not exactly a big episode, and it's another episode where we don't actually talk about new shows because honestly, freaking 2 episodes ago, we already did this Keepup. But now we're doing it again because of the new episodes of DIBS and Google's Diplomatic Show and all of this stuff that, of course, we covered today. Especially because a bunch of it, the creators themselves came by to comment and be like, hey, new episodes out. And, come on, I want to get to them with a little bit of haste and not cover them, in 2 weeks' time. So, I decided to go take a look at it. right here today. We will be taking a look at new stuff tomorrow again, because again, the backlog is large. However, I know what it is. I know what's going on. You know, I'm prepared. I'm planned. All right, so we should be all right. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. All right. In the meantime, thank you for everybody, of course, for who watched their section or whatever. You know, a lot of these the creators of the shows we've covered here today have watched these catch-up episodes, which I appreciate. Oh, I think it's cool. I think it's fun. And especially, by the way, cool community post. We, of course, have not added any new shows to that community post because we've only updated ourselves and shows that we already knew. However, indeed, we shall keep it moving. All right. That is all for today's installment of On the Catch-Up. I promise to be less busy than I was this week, because this week I was quite busy in it. See you next time. Goodbye.